All right. So let's start in extended child's pose, the way we would start a gentle yoga class. So come on down, toes together, knees apart. And you can stretch your arms out, or you can put your hands one on top of the other and put your forehead down. It really just depends which feels more grounding to you. The stretching the arms out is meant to help you open up your upper back. But if your legs are tight, that's not going to feel very restful. So in any position with your arms, focus your breathing between your shoulder blades. So we're purposely letting the upper back round. The head is on the floor or on your hands. Let the full weight of your head drop down so that the base of the skull can open up a little bit. Those vertebrae there can have a little bit of circulation around them. They're holding your head up all day long. So breathing, upper back, mid back. If you can switch your breath to your nose, try. And as you practice, so the tongue is mostly on the roof of the mouth, the front roof of the mouth, and your nose breathing. That's sort of the more relaxed position for the nervous system, the cranial nerves, which are on alert all day long, helping you see and smell and taste and hear, etc. But we can let them kind of, I don't know, soften. That's a funny term to say for nerves, but we can let them take the back burner. Let the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve, let that one become a little bit more dominant. Make some space for it all the way back brain, back of the lungs, all the way down to the low back, into your stomach. Just feeling the energy, the buzz leave your head and become more of a flow into your body. And then we'll stretch our arms out, spread your fingers, tuck your toes under, just go to downward puppy for the moment. So knees are down, toes are tucked, lean back. Do go ahead and align your heels here. So the heels are pointing straight up to the sky, palms are face down. So you're this one long, stretched out, lined up sort of conduit, right? From tailbone to crown of head. Nice full breath around that central line you've just created. Expanding the sides of the ribs. And then we'll go to downward facing dog just for a few breaths, just to stretch out the back of the legs so your kneecaps point straight forward, heels straight back. And that's important for lining up the pelvis, so we don't let the heels turn in. That tightens the back of the pelvic floor. And we don't let the knees turn in. That tightens the front of the pelvic floor. So we're trying to keep them squared off. Parallel lines. Your shins are parallel lines. Take one more breath here. And then exhaling forward to plank and all the way down to your stomach. You always place your knees down first, just lowering yourself down. It doesn't have to be graceful. Point your toes straight back. Turn your palms face up behind you. Now, before you go too much further, just check in with the spaciousness of your back body. So often when we lift the head up like this, we start to tighten the low back. So I want you to push your top of your thigh bones down, but then lift your low stomach and see if you can't broaden the low back a little bit and keep that. And just one breath, inhale, lift a little higher and then lower back down. So just that much. And then place your hands underneath your shoulders, come onto hands and knees. And we'll do some cat and cow, but remembering that low back spaciousness. So as you inhale and look up and take your tail up, just gently tone your low stomach as well, and then rounding. So we want to keep some space in the low back, just like we like to keep space at the base of the skull. Inhale and exhale to round. So you have lots of space there. And then when you inhale, look up, support the back body with the muscles of the front body and exhale to round. So right here, the abdominal muscles lift And then they keep lifting as you inhale, look up, and exhale. And it's a hard thing to keep all of these actions going, right? It's like we're moving the spine, we're working the breath, and then we also have to tone some muscles. And part of having so much to do in yoga is that it keeps our attention, right? So we focus our attention right here, right now on the body. Plenty to pay attention to. You can't really wander away with your mind. And last one, rounding the spine, looking toward your belly, and then back to neutral. So finding that gentle lift through the low abdominal muscles, and again, that broadening through the low back. We'll take the left foot behind us, toes are down on the mat, right arm up. Again, find some space at the base of the skull. So just check that you're not overlifting your head, and extend out. Think of like a pointer dog pointing to that duck way out there in the marsh. I think that's what they're supposed to be doing, those hunting dogs. Okay, so here we are pointing. Keep your back heel straight up and down. Don't let it turn in or out, and lift the back leg. And then lift your low abdominal muscles. And we'll just hold this for another breath. Big inhale. And exhale, come down, hand and knee. And then second side, we'll take that right leg straight back, left arm up, and that pointing position, that energetic reaching, extending through the back leg, through the front arm, space at the base of the skull, space at the base of the spine. Now keep that low back space as you lift your back leg up, knee is facing down, toes are facing down. Lengthen the whole torso from the inside, stretching long, and then exhale, hand and knee come down. Okay, now a little twist, taking your left palm face up. So we'll keep this one nice and open, come all the way onto that left shoulder, forehead comes down, come onto your right fingertips. I like this twist because the knees are squared off on the floor, and therefore the pelvis can stay more squared off. So the twisting is happening more through your gut and your rib cage. Take a nice full breath. And then exhaling. Let's take one more big inhale. And exhale. And back to center. And to the second side. And just watching where you gather tension, either in your yoga practice or throughout your day, where you didn't even know. So right here, check the tip of your chin, right? You can open your throat a little bit, you can tuck your chin a little bit, and just see, you might even turn your face more up to the sky or down more toward the floor. There's a spot where that flow of energy is more clear up and down the spine. Or you could think if a flow of energy is too weird a thing to grab onto, think more, there's less tension. There's less tension between the skull, the neck, and the upper back. Nice big full inhale, and then exhaling, and we'll come back to center. Good, and then we'll place our hands, spreading the fingers nice and wide, crease of the wrist parallel with the front of the mat, tuck your toes, downward facing dog. Lifting up and back, lean it back, knees point straight forward, crease of the hips straight back, push into your finger pads, push into your knuckles, the heel of the hands just gently lift a little bit, inner edges of the armpits lift a little bit as you stretch long. And then again, we'll come forward to plank pose, lower yourself down, point your toes straight back. This time, interlace your hands behind your back, palms face each other, curl the shoulders back, lift the low abdominals so you get that space in the low back, and curl your head and chest up. So it might feel to you as if you're just slightly tucking your tail. Eventually, you don't have to tuck your tail to access your lower abdominal muscles. All right, you can actually be neutral with the pelvis, but at first it might feel a little tail tuck, big inhale, and then come all the way down, hands under your shoulders, lifting up and back, downward facing dog, placing your hands carefully each time. Take your right leg up to the sky. Let's keep the hips squared off for this one. So that means I'm dropping that right hip a little bit, toes and knee face the floor, and I'm trying to lift through the left low stomach quite a lot. Really scooping that left low belly. Push your arms straight and strong. Okay, then draw that right knee into your chest, and we're going to step it all the way forward between your hands. So as long as you can, longest step as you can, step that foot forward, come up on your fingertips. You can have your chest or your rib cage on your thigh, that's totally fine. Front shin is vertical. Now again, find that clear line through the upper back, the neck, and the skull. So there's less tension. There's less tension around the hinge of the jaw, around the ears, around the bridge of your nose. When we free up that kind of gripping that happens at the base of the skull, all the cranial nerves can start to chill out a bit. They don't have to be on high alert. Let's place the back knee down and then sweep your arms up. Lifting up. So again, are you breathing through your nose? Can you breathe through your nose? Can you let the tongue gently rest at the front of the upper palate? Big inhale. And then exhale, touch down. Step back to downward facing dog. Sometimes just paying attention to the tension in the neck and the jaw and the sides of the head, literally the sides of your head, can shift the way that your whole spine is orienting. Let's take the left leg up, knees squared off, toes pointing down to the floor. So we're going to lift a lot through the right low belly, right up out of that, as if we're going to lift up out of that hip joint on the right side. The left side's just kind of hanging out there, maybe trying to square it off a little bit by lowering it. Push your arms straight and strong. Then draw your left knee into your chest and stepping forward as far forward as you can. Keep working on that action. And if you need to, you use your hand, or you even have to place the back knee down, that's fine, to get into this long lunge. Once you're there, pick up your back knee. Come fingertips on either side of the front foot, but still my rib cage is touching my thigh. And now I'm going to just find the orientation in this pose of the spine, right? So from tailbone out through crown of head, relaxing my eyes, my jaw, the base of the skull, and putting that force, that focus down into my feet, grounding it down. Place your back knee down. Inhale, sweep your arms up. Big, full stretch. Again, find that line, that energetic extension that you orient toward and kind of seek out tension patterns around. Inhale. And then exhale, touch down. We'll step back to downward facing dog. Bending the knees a little bit to take the crease of the hips back more, not the back of the knees back. And then slide forward to plank and lower yourself down. This time, interlace your hands behind your back, other pinky on the outside, if you remember which way that is. Curl your shoulder blades back. So we're opening the collarbones. Right now, we're exaggerating the pinching of the shoulder blades, just briefly, right? My hands are resting on my butt cheeks, and I'm purposely over squeezing the shoulder blades. Then rest your head, keep your hands clasped, and you'll see the shoulder blades open a little bit. Can you keep that spaciousness in the upper back as you now lift your head and chest? You may not be able to lift your hands and keep the spaciousness in your upper back, and that's fine. Just notice the space and breathe into that as if you're widening your upper back even as you're lifting. Don't neglect your lower back, so you still have to lift your lower abdominals. Big inhale, and then come all the way down. Place your hands underneath your shoulders, tuck your toes, going back to hands and knees again. And we're gonna do a little crescent from here. So taking your hips to the left, take your left ear toward your hips. So just going back and forth slowly, crescenting, right ear to right hip, left ear to left hip, just back and forth a few times. We often do the crescent from the upper body. Here we're doing the crescent, letting the lower body lead the way. So gentle with the ear, but let those hips stretch, one and then the other. We'll just do one more time to the right side and back to center. And now downward facing dog, and building on that crescent, we'll add a little twist to it. So take your right leg up to the sky, bend your knee, and now you're opening the side body up, putting more weight on your left hand as if you were going to take your right hand right off the floor. We're not, but as if, right? I could come up on my right fingertips. Now find the base of the skull, even though you're twisting, right? Still find that line. Release any tension, upper back, skull, jaw. Place the right foot back down. Take your left leg up, bend the knee, open the hips, turning way open. You're going to have more weight on that right arm. Both arms are straight, as if you could come on your left fingertips. Big opening, so you're twisting, but still finding that central axis. You're still breathing, expanding around that center line, releasing tension all the way along it, and place your left foot down. Good, now walk your feet toward your hands, standing forward bend. Bow your head, hold on to your forearms, your elbows, and rest. Now, this is a tricky one because for some people this is really tight in the low back. If you've been lifting a lot of stuff, doing a lot of gardening, this is not going to feel great on your low back. So then you want to bend your knees and stick your butt back more. And so you're going to sit back on your heels a little bit and rest the upper back that way. There's less tension in the low back that way than if I straighten and I lean forward. So you can check that out. If you can't get out of low back pulling here, then just bring your elbows to your knees and sit like this. Especially if you've been doing a lot of gardening, it's not so great on the low back to keep hanging on it. You're not solving anything. So this is your alternative if the low back is bothering you. Good, and then everybody will come up to this position. Elbows on knees, knees pointing straight ahead. Push into your heels, come up to stand. So that, again, that's the preferable way to come up when your low back is working too hard. Okay, here we are. Feet are parallel. Inhale, stretch your arms up. Exhale, hands to your sides. Big inhale. See if you can breathe through your nose. Exhale. Now just watch. As you take your arms overhead, are you creating more tension in your neck or at the base of the skull? Because if you are, you can just do this with your arms, right? And exhale. So inhale, you can just go to 45 degrees. Keep the top of the shoulders down. And look, now there's more space at the base of your skull. What you'll notice is sometimes if you're tight and you go up here, you're cutting off that energetic flow. So that's something for you to really pay attention to as you're practicing. This next one, we're going to bow forward. Inhale. Exhale. So there's no rule that the hands have to go to the sky. Inhale, look halfway up. Exhale to bow. So you could be bending your knees quite a lot here. Inhale, come all the way up. And so watch that space at the base of the skull. Keep it open. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. How many times do we cut off the flow between our body and brain? Exhale to bow, just to sort of maintain some outer form, right? Inhale. There's so many versions of that in our life. Exhale, cutting our brain and bodies off from each other. Exhale, bow forward. So keeping that connection, reestablishing that connection is what we're really doing in our yoga practice. Exhale to bow. Inhale, come all the way up. And exhale, hands to your sides. We're going to do that one more time. Inhale, checking in with the base of the skull. Exhale. Here you might check in with the front hip joint, so there's still space in here. Exhale to bow. Inhale, come all the way up. And exhale. So we're sort of trying to do all these funny yoga poses without throwing any one part of the body under the bus, right? It's like without sacrificing any one thing too much. Let's do the same thing, but with some lunges. Inhale. Exhale to bow. Inhale, look halfway up. Step your left foot back, long lunge, and we'll sweep the arms up for crescent lunge. Pushing into your heels. So check it out. Let's just take the arms to 45 degrees. Bend your elbows even a little bit. Sit back into that back foot. Push into your front heel. Inhale, open the top of the chest, but keep the upper back full, like you're trying to broaden the shoulders, front and back sides of the shoulders, widening out through the elbows. Big inhale. Now, exhale, touch down. Keep your left hand down where it is, about a hip distance apart from the right foot. Take your right hand to your low back. So that's the twist right now. It's a nice open twist. And I like this one because I can really find that axis from back heel up through the sacrum, up through the back of the heart and the base of the skull. So I can connect all of those planes and then work them together to turn, all together, not sacrificing any one place for the mobility or the looks of another place. And then exhale, touch down, and we'll step all the way back to downward facing dog. Slide it forward to plank pose, lower down, point your toes, keep your hands right underneath the sides of your chest, shoulders lift, broaden the upper back, lift the low stomach, curl your head and chest up. It's like a high cobra. I'm opening the collarbones, I'm supporting my whole spine through the front body action and lowering down, tuck the toes, lifting up and back. Remember, every single one of these you could do in this more friendly way, my knees, then lean it back. So no need to sacrifice one part just to do a form you think you're supposed to do. Walk your feet forward to your hands, at least not in our yoga practice. Like, let's make that friendly, right? Bow, inhale, come all the way up. Exhale, hands to your sides. Inhale, look up, exhale, bow. Inhale, look halfway up. Step your right foot back, long lunge. Sweep your arms up to crescent lunge. So my toes are down, heel is up, heel is straight up and down. Not turning in. Trying to work on my balance there. Front shin vertical. Trying to get my front thigh horizontal. And then I could take my arms open a little bit, broadening out through the elbows, through the upper back, and finding that energetic extension from back leg all the way up the spine, opening the chest. Do I have space at the base of my skull? Can I soften the bridge of my nose a little bit? Take up a little more space side to side. Exhale, touch down. Right hand stays down. You can come up on your fingertips for more space. Left hand on your low back. And turning. Sending that left hip back, right hip lifting, extending out. And then touch down. We'll step all the way back, downward facing dog. Lean it forward and lower down. Again, you could place your knees down, and that way you can use your abdominal muscles a little more to support you. Hands underneath your shoulders, curl your shoulders back, curl your head and chest up, lower back down, toes tuck, lifting up and back, downward facing dog. And then we'll walk the feet and hands together. Bow, push into your feet. Inhale, come all the way up, stretch up. Exhale, hands to your sides. All right, so here we are, top of the mat. Bring your feet together. Hug your legs together. We're going to do Utkatasana, arms come up. Again, check that you're not stressing the back of the skull. Good, we have Amy back. Okay, sitting low. Scoop your abdominals back. Sit back into your heels as much as you can. So I could take my arms even a little bit wider. It looks like I'm taking them back behind me, but I'm really just widening them. Sit low. Tuck those front ribs in. And then open the top of the chest up. You can do both things at the same time. It's good practice. And come all the way up. And hands to your sides. Okay, we're going to add a little twist to that. So feet are still together. It's a good warm up for the legs. Inhale, arms come up. Settle them back into a comfortable place. Sit low. Yes, tuck those front ribs in. Now, take both hands over to your right thigh. So I'm holding onto that right thigh. Collarbones broaden. And I can sit back. So I'm trying to avoid leaning forward, trying to sit back a little bit. If your knees don't love this, come up a little bit. We're really going for warming the legs up, establishing that squared off pelvis as I rotate the collarbones. And then center, come back up, arms up, exhale. Catch your breath, because usually sitting back and using the thighs raises our heart rate and breath rate. Okay, so second side, arms come up, and then settle them. Settle the top of the shoulders. Sit low. Lean into your heels a little bit. Take your hands to your left side. Hands on the thighs. Hips are trying to stay squared off. If my knees stay squared off, my hips will stay squared off. And I'm just using a little pressure with the hands to turn the collarbones, broaden the collarbones, sitting low. I know it's a good amount of work in your legs. It should be. We want to teach the legs to work so the low back doesn't have to. And then we'll come up to stand and exhale. Okay. Take a nice medium wide stance. So not as wide as you can go, but medium. Turn your heels in and we'll bend the knees and bring the elbows to those inner thighs. Sit your hips low. So they're not as low as my knees. I just like to show that my hips are actually just above my knees. I'm not down here. I got a little lift, and I got a little lift through my stomach as well. So I'm lifting up out of the front of the hip joints, even as I'm leaning back into the hip joints, right? I'm leaning back through those thigh bones, trying to take them straight back behind me. And then we'll just go a little bit side to side, just get a little movement there. Inner thighs are stretching, trying to take the inner thighs straight back. Lift your low abdominals, relax your neck and shoulders, nice and easy there. Good, and then come up to stand. Okay, now, keeping the feet wide, we'll turn toward the right, turn your right toes out, left foot is turned in a little bit. Bend that front knee, come onto your forearm. So here we are preparing for side angle, but we're not in it yet. We're not going to do the top arm yet. So we've got the front leg at a right angle. If you need to, sneak your back foot even further back, and then make sure that your back heel is just turned back a little bit. So I'm not turning it out. I'm not turning my heel in, my toes out. Got my heel leaning back. Okay, tuck those front ribs in. Fill the back body with your breath. Bring your hand to your waistline. Keep it there. Broaden your collarbones first. So try to square off your torso. Don't worry about your pelvis. This top hip, it should be moving back, but it may not be rolled open, if that makes sense. It can be back, but you don't have to try to open your hips like a book. Okay, so hold the hips, but now try to open the torso as if you're opening the collarbones like a book. Just hold that, extend out through the crown of the head, push into your back leg, strong. You can even use this top hand to help you ground that top hip down through the back leg, strong. Good, and come up. Okay, so that's actually a really good hip opener, and it's a good way to teach you how to use your torso to turn instead of necessarily the pelvis. We'll turn the left toes straight out. Back heel turns out a little bit, so the toes are either parallel with the back edge of the mat or turned in slightly. Bend your front knee. We'll go forearm to knee. Leg is at a right angle. This pose takes a good amount of leg strength. That's part of the purpose. Again, teach your low back to give up a little bit of its power to the legs. Okay, hand on the waist for now. This top thigh moves straight to the back plane. So there's a little bit of wrinkles in the fabric at the front of my hip here. But that's all that thigh is going to do. That's all that pelvis is going to do right there. I'm going to hold that as I tuck my ribs in and then slowly open the collarbone. So the rotation is coming from the upper body, and then the waistline is following. The pelvis is not following. Okay, that pelvis is going to hold really still. I'm going to use my leg muscles to hold my pelvis steady. Push into that back leg strong. Turn open a little bit more, and then push into your legs and come up. Good. This should be a good amount of leg work. It really should. Keep your feet parallel. So turn your feet parallel. Turn your heels even a little tiny bit wider so your feet really are parallel. Hands on your hips. Now push into your legs. Push strong down right into the front of the heels, and then lift up the legs. Now, in that action, in the tension of the last few poses, what have you done to your upper back and neck, right? So tongue is still on the upper palate, base of the tongue is let go, ears are broad, so find that. Now, bow forward. If your low back is tight, you just walk your hands way out in front of you, and you can hold that pose for quite a while. Push into your heels, lift your low stomach. So that's a really nice low back pose, right? And I'll show you from the side too. Legs wide, so I'm getting a nice inner thigh stretch. I'm grounding down through the leg bones. But look, my torso is staying horizontal to the ground. I'm up on fingertips. I'm really working, again, the strength of the legs to help relieve the low back. I've got my low abdominals drawing in and up here as I push down the leg muscles. Of course, If all is well, you can now bow forward more. But this should feel really fine, totally fine, no tension here. The top of the thigh bones have to move back. The top of the shins are slightly moving forward, right? So I'm not hyperextending my knees. I can push down to the whole foot, toes to heels. Inhale halfway up. If you can, push into your legs strong, hands to your hips, come all the way up to stand using those leg muscles. If you have to bend your knees, that's okay. All right, and then we'll step back to the front of the mat. All right, let's integrate some of those poses into a little bit of a flow. Here we go. I've successfully warmed up. At the end of May, it is finally warm enough to be able to have a tank top on. Okay, inhale. Exhale to bow. Inhale, look halfway up. Step your left foot back, nice long lunge. Pivot your back heel down, right forearm to knee. Now, left arm comes across the cheek, and we're going to see if we can find that same collarbone broadening that we had before. So top thigh moves straight back. Hold your pelvis steady. Now open the collarbones, even though your arm is over your ear. This is a tricky one for a lot of people. Even though the arm is in an awkward position, can we still widen the collarbones and turn from the rib cage? Just like you were doing when the hand was on the waistline. Same action. Nothing is moving, nothing is changing. Same thing. Then push into that front leg and we'll come up to warrior two. Broaden the stance a little bit. Turn your palms face up. Bend your elbows so that you can integrate the shoulder blades on the back. Broaden your upper back and rotate the torso. So the hips stay there. Hips don't have to, again, the hips don't have to open like a book, right? We can just turn the torso to the left, ground down through that left back leg. Big inhale, extending up through the crown of the head. Straighten your front leg. Now, right hand to right shin. Let's take the left hand to the waist because it gets distracting. Right hand to right shin. And again, hips are holding steady. How do you hold the hips steady? From the outer shins and the inner thighs, hugging toward the bones. So they're sandwiching together. And then I'm holding that. Pelvis isn't moving just as I turn my torso. So this is a very modified triangle that is great for everybody. Extending out through the skull, pushing down into that back leg strong. Use my hand to ground that back pelvis down. Then come up and we'll step to the front. So that is just, it feels like maybe overly modified yoga, but it's really helpful to not, again, to not compromise one part for the sake of looking good. Inhale, take your arms up. Exhale to bow. Inhale, halfway up. Step your right foot back. Pivot your back heel down. Come forearm to thigh. And then that top arm comes across the face. Now, you can always check out if you really did that with the top arm properly. And if you're really just opening the collarbones, put your hand on your waist. Take that top thigh back. Draw your rib cage back, collarbones open. Don't move anything except your right arm. Can you keep your collarbones there? Is the base of the skull still happy? If the answer is no, bend that top arm, right? It doesn't have to go straight. Some days we can't straighten it without creating tension in the base of the skull. The jaw should be let go, the hinge of the jaw, the bridge of the nose. Those are all good check-in points. The abdominals are gently drawing back. It's not overly tense. Okay. Now, come up through the torso. Let me straighten that leg briefly. Turn your palms face up. Bend that front knee again. If you need to walk your back foot back a little bit, right? Bend your elbows and draw your shoulder blades onto your back. Just that much, right? Now, re-broaden through the collarbones. So if I go here, sometimes if I really overly straighten my elbows and arms, it's a nice energetic expression, but sometimes I get then locked down and I can't feel the breath in the top of my chest. If I bend, elbows, upper back is engaged, and now I can have this whole widening, the whole sides of the rib cage, pushing into that back leg strong. Stay with it, and then straighten the front leg. Now, baby triangle. We're going to take this hand to the waistline. this hand just lightly to the top of the shin. There's not a lot happening in this pose that is glamorous. Okay, but the point is to establish the foundation, the steadiness of the pelvis. It's not cranking open at all. It's just staying right where it is. And instead, I'm going to just turn my rib cage and collarbones, keeping those front ribs established. They're not flying away. They're gently snugging in. And I'm just going to open my shoulders, collarbones, head in line. Let's get that to work first, right? Establish that foundation. From there, we could do anything we want with our arms in triangle. But we're just going to do this. And then come up to stand, and we'll step to the front of the mat. Okay. Push down into your feet. Inhale, stretch up. Exhale, bow. Inhale, look halfway up. Exhale, step all the way back, downward facing dog. Let's take the right leg up. Notice, we're going to square off first. So I want you to notice how you can open the pelvis and close the pelvis. We're going to keep it closed, lifting through that left side. Left knee is not hyperextended. Left leg is not so high. We're lifting more through, right leg is not so high. We're lifting more through the left low belly. Draw your right knee into your chest. Step your foot forward. Come up on your fingertips for a nice long lunge. Hips are squared off. So I could tip toward the left hip, but I'm going to lift the left hip and instead try to hug that right butt cheek to the right heel. Even as I now put my left knee down, I'm going to really tip to the right side. That's how I'm going to square off my hips. Really squeezing that right hip toward the right heel. Come up on fingertips, extending. If the floor is too far away for you to really feel like you can open your collarbones, you don't have to touch the floor. You could lift up a little bit higher to open the collarbones. And we're going to lean forward. We're going to lean forward and drag that back knee with us. We're going to lean the knee over the toes, the front knee over the toes. I'm going to reach that back heel back down. Okay, and then I'm going to come up and I'm in a right angle if all went well. One knee and the other knee, mostly. I might actually have to back up a little bit. So I'm straight up over that back knee. Front knee is at a right angle. Open the collarbones. Bend your elbows. Broaden your back body. So between the shoulder blades are hugging on, but between the shoulder blades, try to widen. Fill that area with breath. Put your head right in the middle. Push down into that back leg. Push into your front heel. Lift open the chest. It's not a back bend. It's the backbone of a back bend, right? It's the foundation. You got to push down into your feet. Pelvis is grounding. Lift up through the chest, and then exhale, touch down. So just establishing again that foundation. Then downward facing dog. Feel that right side. A little bit more opening through that right side. And we'll take the left leg up again, really squaring off the hips. So getting very familiar with what it feels like to open the hips and square off the hips. In this case, squaring off, lifting a lot through that right low belly. Really scooping, it's the psoas muscle in there, one of the hip flexors. It goes all the way up to the low back. We're trying to really lift that up out of the hip joint. Then draw that left knee forward, step it forward, long lunge to start. Here we are, squaring off the hip. So I'm going to scoop a little bit through that right hip, turn my kneecap straight down, and then I'm going to really squeeze my left hip toward my left heel. Keeping that action, placing the back knee down, leaning a little to the left. That means my knee is even off to the left slightly. Then I'm going to start leaning that knee forward. Again, it's slightly to the left. It's slightly to the outside. So I can fully see my big toe, for example. Okay, I'm not over my big toe. I actually open my knee slightly to the left. Most of us need that stretch a bit more in the ankle. I'm leaning forward. Again, if you feel like the floor is too close, you can open up the collarbones. You'll put a little more weight onto that front calf. It's fine. Like the knee head out over the toes and trying to get the heel back down on the floor. Then leaning back, And again, if all went well, we're in this right angle with the back leg and the front foot. I always seem to be slightly too long, so I back up a bit. So I'm really straight up and down over that back leg. Take your arms up, bend your elbows. So we got that broadening through the front collarbones, but then also through behind the shoulder blades. So the shoulder blades themselves are hugging on, but the space between the shoulder blades is wide. Watch, what did you do just there? Did you tense down the top of the neck or the base of the ears? Are you overly gripping from your butt muscles? So can you spread the energy out and not be grippy in one place or the other? All the parts of the body, open, broad, getting circulation and flow and breath. Inhale, looking up, open the top of the chest. Exhale, touch down. And we'll step back to downward facing dog. And that's a good way to open up that left hip. So now it should feel a little more spacious in the top of the left hip joint. And from there, we'll come down onto our knees. Let's keep the knees and heels close together at first. So just sitting back on the heels. And if that's not possible, you can always sit on a block. You can sit on anything that you want here. Find a comfortable seated position, right? I mean, people do this stretch in a chair all the time. It works great. So here we are. Whatever position you have, check the tension of the thighs and that you're equally able to release your pelvis down. So your pelvis is squared off. A lot of times we don't even notice we're listing to one side or the other because one thigh is tighter than the other. So give yourself enough support, right, that we're squared off here. Okay, taking your left fingertips out. I'm going to relax that left shoulder. Now, same principle applies that my knees are squared off, therefore my pelvis is squared off. We're going to keep it that way. The only thing that's going to happen is up in the upper body. So we're going to keep the lower body as our anchor point and take that top arm over. Okay, and I say this about the pelvis because now I want you to turn, just like you would in side angle, turn open, soften your front ribs a little bit so the back body is really getting full with your breath. You can feel that twist and fullness. So it's funny, in yoga when we twist, we're not necessarily squeezing ourselves like a rag into the thinnest possible position. It's like we're twisting and widening. It's the ever-expanding rag or sponge. Broaden to your sides. Nice full breath. And then squaring yourself back off, we'll take that top arm down. You have to shrug the shoulder back, reach through your fingertips. Now release your left ear down toward your left shoulder. Reaching through your right fingertips, nice and long. Okay, this is where you get to really let your face go. You'll let your cheek hang, let your ear hang. Hips are still squared off. In fact, I'm reaching down through my right hip, back to my right heel. A little nodding, yes, just a little bit. And no, can you let the base of the tongue go? The base of the skull, nice and smooth there. Maybe little circles with the head and then reverse your circles. Just working that vertebrae at the base of the skull. You might not even be able to feel it, that's fine. Take your hand, pick your head back up, and we're back to center, although you might not feel centered, which is okay. Your brain has adjusted its perception of center on what you just stretched. Take your right hand out, nice and easy in that elbow and shoulder, okay? Hips are squared off, knees are squared off. Top arm comes across. We'll keep the hips where they are. I'm going to keep grounding my left hip as I turn my torso open. This is great practice for side angle pose for establishing the upper body position of side angle when we're standing and realizing, okay, the hips just ground. Check in with your low back. Are you trying to do anything to your low back? It shouldn't really be doing anything. It's, if anything, the pelvis is dropping down to the ground. So just check that you're not creating extra low back tension. If anything, the front ribs are softening in, okay? And that will help fill that low back. Turn the torso open, collarbones open, but keep softening the front ribs, dropping the hips. So if we were doing this standing side angle, we'd be pushing into the legs to ground the pelvis down. Here we're just letting the hips drop with gravity. And then coming back to center, slide that top arm down. Shoulder shrugs back, left shoulder, right? Right shoulder still nice and easy. and then lower your ear. I'm not dropping my head. I'm continuing to extend through my left arm. So there's a stretch happening. It's not a letting go. It's an active stretch, lengthening the side of the neck. See if you can swallow, right? See if you can shift your head forward and back and see find where neutral is. How do you know where neutral is? You're guessing. You're basing it on your feeling. And then nodding a little bit of yes, just nice and slow. And no, you have these two vertebrae at the base of the skull. And this is their job, is to do this, no, and yes. We want them to move freely, do little circles with your head, little circles the other way. And then using your right hand, pick your head back up. Good. Okay, now let's free the feet. So we'll come back to downward facing dog, stepping back, walking the feet out. Let the blood flow come back to the tops of your feet if that's how you were sitting. They get a little smushed. We're going to go right into toe breaker pose, though, to work the toes the other way. So go ahead and come onto your knees. Toes are tucked, heels together. Well, they're not going to maybe be fully together. We're trying. So we're really working the big toe joint. Now, there are a lot of issues with toe joints and ankle joints in this pose. So this can be toe breaker, where I'm leaning forward and I'm just working the range of motion I can. You don't want to feel hot in the toe joints or pins and needles or shards of glass. Those are all bad feelings in the toes. Mobility good, pins and needles bad. So work where you can. And if the big toe is really a problem, work the little toe joints, right? Widen your heels, okay? Otherwise, we're working to sit back, get that full range of motion. As long as you have the ability to work the full range of motion of your feet, continue to do so, because there may come a day when it just doesn't happen anymore. Those joints get too calcified, there's too much tissue in there, swelling, etc. So keep moving them as much as you can for as long as you can. And we're just sitting back there. And let's take another breath here, opening up the soles of the feet. And then lean it forward. And again, free your toes up. Step it back, downward facing dog. Last time, we're going to slide forward to plank pose, lower all the way down. Okay, so coming onto your forearms into a low sphinx, point your toes straight back. This pose should be comfortable in the low back. If it's not, you have to lower down even more. You may have to take your elbows wider. Okay, but wherever you can in this back bend, if you can come up on your forearms, go for it. You have to support your low back through the low abdominal muscles and also stretching the legs straight back. Really reaching those legs back helps with the low back. Bend the right knee. We're going to cross the left forearm across and hold on to the foot, top of the foot. If I can only get the outside, that's fine. Right? It's a little nicer on the shoulder to go thumbs up, so external rotation, and get the inside of the foot. And that's all we're going to do is just holding on there. It's more of a shoulder opener than anything. So my thumb is face up. It's on the inside of my foot. And I could push the foot into my hand and open the shoulder up this way, pushing the pelvis down. Find your low abdominal muscles and breathe into it. And then place that hand down. And we'll do the second side. So forearm comes across. Palm goes thumb up inside of foot. If that doesn't work, have palm down and push back. Okay. Otherwise, thumb up. And I'm pushing the foot into the hand. External rotation. It means my shoulder is rolling open, opening the collarbones. Use your low abdominals to support your low back. We're going to do the thigh stretch variation in just a moment. We'll do it from a lunge though. So here we are, opening up the shoulder first, and then place that down. Okay, come on down for a moment. In fact, place your forehead down, breathe into your low back, and then lift up and back. So just give some space to those low back vertebrae. Step your right foot forward, and then we're on our left fingertips. Right hand goes back. Again, we're going to try to do thumb up. Okay, so palm facing out, and take the inside, the pinky toe side of the foot, because we're going opposite hand foot now. So I've got my right hand reaching toward my left foot and trying to stretch that way. There are many things that can inhibit this pose. One is the kneecap on the floor. So you could fold your mat and have a little more padding there. You could lean slightly more forward. You could take a shorter stance and lean more forward. And that way I'm less on the center of the kneecap and more toward the thigh. That's a little bit nicer too. Curling that shoulder open, curling the collarbones open, still trying to ground and square off the hip so that right hip is headed toward the right heel. Nice full breath. And then we'll release. And if the knee is bothering me, I'll lean way far forward to come out of that left foot forward. I'm on my right fingertips. If my kneecap is going to bother me, I could roll the mat, have more padding there, or I could take a slightly shorter stance, tuck my toes, get onto the top of the knee first. Right, that's just a little trick so that I'm not putting pressure right down on the kneecap. Left palm faces out, thumb up, take that pinky toe side of the foot. And I'm just staying here for a thigh stretch. You can move around if you want to explore it. I'm a big fan of moving in yoga poses. Slow meditative movement, right? Not just sort of movement to get out of things, but movement to explore and breathe and see where's the range of motion. Is there still breath here? Am I locked into the pose? Where's the tension? Is it in my low back, my neck, my jaw? Maybe for you it's your toes and fingers. That's a whole nother class. Take another breath here. And then again, leaning forward if your kneecap is touchy, tucking the toes, lift the knee up, and we'll step it back. Okay, taking your knees wide, toes together, sit your hips right back onto your heels, and extended child's pose, but then we're going to crescent over to the right, coming all the way up and over. Use that right hand to push your hips back toward your heels, left arm reaches, nice full breath into the side body. So many times getting the back to feel better is just about getting that flow moving again. Repetitive movements or sometimes just over-efforting, if we've been doing a lot of work in one way or another, will shut down circulation patterns, right? It will shut down certain movement patterns. So all we have to do is open them back up again. So here, opening up the side body. So the front and back can start to work together again. The front body muscles can start to support the back body muscles so they don't have to work so hard. One more full breath. And then back to the center and over to the second side. Lifting up and over. We'll use that left hand to ground the hips, right arm moves. Just the practice of yoga as a means of diversifying the movement you've been doing with your body, your normal daily movement patterns. Yoga just mixes it up. That's all we're really doing, is getting your brain to figure out different ways of being. And that's often enough to interrupt painful patterns. You know, it's not the magic of yoga as much as it is just doing new movements. Like, have you done this side stretch in the last few days? Unlikely, right? So just getting your brain to feel, oh, okay, rib muscles stretch this way. Big inhale. Good, and back to center. Is enough to get your brain to recalibrate muscle tension in certain ways. We're going to come all the way over onto our back. So movement diversity, very useful for preventing injury and for soothing, mild injuries. Okay, hug that right knee into the chest. Stretch the left leg long. Reach the left leg. Reach, and turn your kneecap and toes straight up. So don't let them turn out to the left. Turn them up to the sky. Then let go of your right knee a little bit. So don't let go literally, but release it out. And keep pushing down through that left leg, down into the mat. Now draw your abdominals back as well. As if you're trying to get the back of the left leg onto the mat with the least amount of back arch as possible. There's going to be some back arch, but not a lot. Interlace your hands behind your right thigh, right at the meaty part of that hamstring. Bend your knee, flex your ankle, and now straighten your leg and point your toes. We're just gonna do that a few times. Bending the knee, flex the ankle, straighten the leg, point the toes. Keep going back and forth. Gentle pressure of the leg on the hands. Bend and flex, straighten and point. One more time, bend and flex. We're just getting the brain to think about the tension patterns in the hamstring. Good. And now take your knee, hug the knee, take it off to the right. You could just use your right hand if you want, or you could use the left hand, just, I don't know, because it's there. Keep your left hip down on the ground. So we're trying not to pick up the left hip. It's staying nice and heavy. Then come across the torso to the left, gentle. So we're still keeping the right hip down. You're not going very far. Relax your foot. It's a good way to clear your nostrils, especially if you have allergies. Soften the front ribs. And then back to center. This time, happy baby pose. Hold on to the sole of your foot. If you have to curl your head and chest up, you can. If you have to bend your left knee, you might have to just to get the sole of your foot. Take your knee off to the right. Shin is vertical. Place your head back down. Okay, so there should be no tension in the upper back or the neck. You might really have to bend your left knee to make that possible. If then all is well and you want to straighten that left knee, go for it. But let the tension be in the inner thigh, in the pelvis, and the outer hips, but not in the neck. Relax your shoulders. Your brain should be able to soften into the back of your skull. You should be able to let the bridge of the nose go. Good, and then release that leg. Both legs go straight for a moment and just pause. And so your brain will pick up the tension patterns. And it's going to say, oh, that feels better on the right side. Let's go with that variation. Sometimes you should just do one whole yoga practice of only one side and see what it does. Okay, we'll do both sides today though. Hug your left knee into your chest. I might become a very unpopular yoga teacher if I try to have you only do one side per class. So now stretch that right leg, strong. I'm hugging my left knee in. So it's like I'm tucking my tail on my left side, but I'm trying to untuck my tail on that right side, trying to reach through the kneecap and toes are straight up and down, reach through that right side, then letting my knee out a little bit. I'm going to try to bring the right leg back down to the floor. That's going to make you arch your low back a little bit, so now tone your abdominals. So it's like we have a neutral pelvis with abdominal tone. Okay. Interlace your hands behind your left thigh. Just gently pushing the thigh into your hands, flex your ankle, and we'll straighten the leg and point the toes. And then bend and flex, nice and slow, just flossing the back of that leg. Bend and flex the ankle, straighten and point. Relax your front ribs. Your neck and shoulders should not be participating. Your upper back actually doesn't need to do much here at all. Bend and flex, straighten and point. One more time, bend and flex, straighten and point. And then bending the knee, we're gonna hug the shin into the chest again, take the knee off to the left. I could just hold with my left hand, but I'm keeping my right hip down. I think holding with my right hand helps me keep my right hip down. I don't know. I have to, yeah. And breathe. This is clearing the whole nostrils, relaxing, again, those cranial nerves by adjusting the pelvis. And then we go over to the right. The pelvis and the skull have a close relationship via the spine. And it's not just like esoteric energetics, it's actually literal physics, just like physics seesaw up and down the vertebrae between the pelvis and the skull. So the position of the skull will very literally, physically affect the position of the pelvis and vice versa. Come back to center, hold on to your foot. If you have to pick up your head and chest and then bend the right knee to get your foot, go ahead. Take your knee off to the left, shin is vertical. And then I can place my head back down. I should be able to rest my head and chest comfortably. And maybe then I could straighten the right leg. It doesn't have to come back down. See, some days for me, my left hip is so tight, my right leg is hovering. That's totally fine. I'm not going to overdo the straightening of the right leg because I want to be able to relax my upper neck and back and just work on this as a left hip opener, pulling that left knee down toward the floor. Nice full breath. And then Release that leg, both legs long for a moment. Shake the legs out. Feel the tension on both sides. It should be a little bit less in the front of the hips now. All right, we're going to finish with a little twist, drawing your knees up to your chest. Arms off to the sides, bend your elbows, shoulder blades back, upper back, let it sink into the mat. So you have your knees drawn in, but your upper back can be resting. The front ribs can be soft. Take your knees over to the right. Let them go all the way to the floor. Now check, because this is an upper shoulder opener, often then we'll also want to arch our back. Just soften your front ribs. So instead of arching the back, think of breathing into the back body here. Of course, it's a front body opener, that's a given. But can you also broaden the back body? So it's like any twist, we're widening front and back, side to side. So I think often in this twist, we sort of neglect the back body and it gets a little smaller, it gets diminished. Nice full breath from the sacrum all the way up. The base of the skull even is widening. You might adjust the tip of your chin like we were doing those other twists. And let your eyes soften a little bit. Take another full breath. And then back to center. And over to the left. To keep the knees together, hips are stacked. So the twisting is happening from the waistline up. This one's a little bit harder to keep the knees stacked. Sometimes it helps to use the hand, right, to hold the knee. Now as you open up the front of the torso, nice and broad and wide, also breathe into your back body. Check the sacrum and the base of the spine, up through the diaphragm, the mid-spine, right up to the base of the skull. All three of those areas are widening. Back of the low back of the heart, back of the skull. Take one more full breath. And then we'll come back to center. Hug your knees in. Okay, you have the option of doing relaxation with the knees bent. You still turn your palms face up, and everybody can start like this. It's nice just to lift the hips up, push into your feet, and then place the hips back down. No, nothing fancy there, just getting back to neutral. So my low back is just a tiny bit arched. That's my natural arch. You might have more of an arch, but I'm not purposely arching the back, right? And my pubic bone is level with my hip bones. That's how I know I'm in neutral. Now, for some people, this actually isn't neutral. This causes a little bit of a tail tuck. This, for me, with my knees bent, I have a little tiny bit of a tail tuck. My pubic bone is slightly above my pelvic bones here. So then I'm going to stretch my legs out, and that actually brings me into neutral. The pubic bone is now level with the top of the hips. Neutral for a lot of people feels too tight in the low back, okay? So then you would bend your knees again. What I can do to help that low back is I can just slide my hands under my butt muscles and just slightly encourage it, just a little tiny bit of a tail tuck, right? Just a little, or at least not an excessive other ways tuck, lordotic curve in the low back. Close your eyes, turn your palms face up. So wherever you land, ideally, it's neutral, the low back feels comfortable. And focus for a moment on the upper back. So remember, the physics is such that the upper back and the lower back are literally connected and they're affecting each other. So sometimes we need to really rest that upper back, let it round back into the floor, into the earth. Let your brain sink back. Swallow. Hinge of the jaw can let go. Soften your eyebrows, soften the bridge of your nose. tongue may not be on the roof of the mouth, but it is let go. So the base of the tongue is totally letting go. Your lips can be closed, and then wherever the tip of the tongue lands, let it be. See if you can just so gently, breathing through the nose, surrendering any control of the breath. So the whole upper body is resting back, surrendering. Can you let the pelvis do the same? So the wings of the pelvis just softly opening, broadening, sinking back. Right where the thigh bones meet the pelvis, let that be very heavy, widening onto the mat. Check if there's any tension in your low belly or even across the navel. Let that go. No more holding, just very soft. Letting all of your tension spread out. Let it flow into the space around you. It becomes thin, see-through, can get blown away by the gentlest breeze. Let yourself become a little bit transparent. The light, the air can very easily flow right through you, right through your skin. Right into your bones and back out again. There's in fact space between every part and particle of you. There is movement between all of those pieces. You are really just a loosely assembled collection of particles. It's come together for this short amount of time, vibrating together in this beautiful coordination of your body. Just feeling a little less solid, a little more movement and space, as if you could dissolve. In the same way that fog slowly condenses into a cloud, pulling yourself back into a form, into a definite shape, pulling your awareness back, all those little particles back into the shape of you. You're still spacious like a cloud, but you're a definitive cloud. You have edges. You can move, condensing back into you. And deepen our breath. Take a big inhale and stretch your arms overhead. Exhale and soften again for a moment. Then draw your knees to your chest. Roll to one side. Using your hands to come back up to sit. Maintain a little bit of that cloud feeling, that spaciousness. Your form comes and goes. You can let go of the tightness and bring the hands together. Just holding this for a moment. Feeling the solidness of your body, but also the shiftability, the spaciousness of it. There's room for you to form it, to release tension, to dissolve tension, and to reform your power and strength where you need it. Take that idea with us into our day. Open your eyes. Thank you.